Can I tell you something now? I said, now that you've decided? Because I've been sitting on it for 2 weeks, and I'm allowed now. She almost laughed, wet-eyed. You kept it down this whole time. I felt you keeping it down. Go on. My Playful Wife, Episode 44, What Goes Quiet, written by Mia. The answer came to her on the 13th day, the second to last of the fortnight, and it came the way the color had come. Not as a thunderclap, not as a decision arrived at by argument, but as a quiet, the simple going silent of one of the 2 roads that had been clamoring in her for 2 weeks. She did not announce it dramatically. There was no scene. She came to the kitchen in the morning, into the same light, and made her own chai for once, and sat down across from me, and held the cup in both hands for warmth, and said, in the plain, flat voice she uses for the truest things, it went quiet. I did not ask which. I knew better than to rush it. I waited.
The small one, she said.
The workroom. My own hands. When I finally got quiet enough to listen, that's the one that went quiet. The way the gray-green went quiet. The way the true thing always does. And the Empire kept talking. It's still talking, even now, this morning. It's a wonderful thing, and it will not stop selling itself to me. And that is how I know it isn't mine. The true one doesn't have to sell itself. It just goes quiet and waits for you to notice it was right all along. She looked at me over the steam. I'm a maker of the hands. I've been listening for 3 days, and that's the answer, and it isn't going to change. The cutting is where I live. It was never a stage I was waiting to graduate from. I would rather make 12 true things a year with my own hands than 10,000 good ones with my name and other people's. That's who I actually am. I'm going to say no. I had waited 2 weeks to hear which way it would land, and now that it had landed, I noticed, with some interest, that the part of me which had secretly hoped for the small road felt no triumph at all, only a kind of awe. It was not my hope being confirmed. It was something cleaner than that. It was watching a person arrive, by her own road, at the truth of herself, and recognizing that the arrival would have been exactly as beautiful had it gone the other way, because the beauty was never in the destination. The beauty was in the listening. She had listened all the way down to the floor of herself, and brought up what was actually there, and that is a rarer and braver thing than any particular answer. I want to be careful here, because the easy version of this story is the one where the noble artisan refuses the crass empire, and we all applaud her purity, and that is not what happened, and to tell it that way would be to betray how hard and how real it actually was.
She tested it.
That was the part that made it a true no and not a frightened one, and she did the testing herself, ruthlessly out loud, across the table, because she did not trust an answer she had not tried to break. I keep checking it against the fear, she said. Devika warned me. She said the fear lies in both directions, that I might be a reach maker hiding from my own size, refusing the empire because I'm scared of being big, and dressing the cowardice up as integrity. So I keep going back and pressing on it, trying to find the fear underneath. And here's how I know it's not that. She set the cup down. If I were refusing out of fear, the refusal would keep talking too. It would keep needing to justify itself, keep arguing, keep reassuring me. A frightened no is loud. It has to be, because it's covering something. But this no is quiet. I say it, and it just sits there, settled, asking nothing, defending nothing. I tried to scare myself out of it, and I couldn't, because there's no fear holding it up. There's just the plain fact of who I am, and facts don't need defending. The empire is the loud one. The no is the quiet one. And I have spent my whole life learning that the quiet one is the true one. And I understood that she had done, in the space of 3 days, the hardest discernment a person ever does, had separated the true refusal from the cowardly one, the two of which are invisible from the outside and produce the identical word, and had done it the only way it can be done, not by thinking harder, but by listening, in the hands, for which one went quiet. I have thought since about how badly the world equips us for this kind of knowing. We are trained to decide by argument, by pro and con, by the marshalling of reasons, as though a life were a court case, and the side with the better evidence ought to win. And some decisions do work that way. But the largest ones, the who am I ones, do not yield to argument at all. You can build an unanswerable case for either side and still not know, because the knowing does not live in the reasons. It lives lower down in the body, in the hands, in the part of you that goes quiet or does not. And the only skill that finds it is the unfashionable, unteachable one of getting still enough to hear yourself below the noise of your own cleverness. But she was not happy, exactly, and I want that on the record too, because the refusal cost her, and she did not pretend it didn't, and the not pretending was the most honest thing in the whole fortnight. "I'm grieving it," she said, plainly, and her eyes were wet, and she let them be. "I want you to know that. I'm not refusing the empire, because I don't want it. I refused it because I'm a maker of the hands, but I'm a maker of the hands who also, separately, wanted the empire, wanted the reach and the money and the thousands of weepers and the name in the duty-free, and saying no to it is a real loss, and I am going to feel it for a long time. There's a woman in some city I'll never visit who would have wept at something I made, and now she won't, because I made the other choice, and I have to live with the fact that my staying true to my hands means she never gets her dress. That's the cost. Refusing the good thing isn't free just because you did it for the true thing. You still lose the good thing. You still have to grieve it. Anyone who tells you the true choice doesn't hurt has never actually made one. I think this is one of the quiet lies we tell each other about integrity, that doing the right thing feels good, that virtue is its own warm reward, that if you only choose truly, you will be spared the ache. It is not so. The truest choices are often the ones that hurt the most, precisely because they are true, because they require you to give up something you genuinely wanted in order to remain something you genuinely are. The reward of a true choice is not pleasure. It is integrity in the oldest sense. Integrity is wholeness, the deep structural rightness of a life whose outside matches its inside. That rightness is worth any amount of ache. But it does not abolish the ache. It only makes it bearable and clean and yours. She wiped her eyes, not ashamed of them, and picked the cup back up. "So that's where I am," she said. "Clear and right and sad. All three at once. I'd be suspicious of myself if I were only the first two." That sentence stopped me the way her best ones do. Most of us reach for happiness as the test of a good decision. If it makes us happy, we reason, it must have been right. But happiness is a poor instrument for this, too easily faked, too quick to attach itself to the merely comfortable. Saloni was proposing a better test, not whether a choice makes you happy, but whether it makes you whole. And wholeness, it turns out, is not the same thing as happiness, and often arrives wearing sadness's coat. A decision that leaves you clear and right and sad is more trustworthy than one that leaves you merely pleased, because the sadness is the receipt, the proof that something real was weighed and something real was paid. And here, at last, was my moment, the one I had been holding myself out of for the whole fortnight, the one I had earned the right to by keeping my thumb off the scale through 14 days of wanting badly to put it on. Because now she had decided, freely, in her own hands, for her own reasons, against a clean, unweighted space I had worked to keep clean. The decision was made and made entirely by her, and could never now be undone or muddied by anything I felt, which meant that for the first time in 2 weeks, I was finally allowed to feel it out loud. "Can I tell you something now?"
I said.
"Now that you've decided? Because I've been sitting on it for 2 weeks, and I'm allowed now." She almost laughed, wet-eyed. "You kept it down this whole time. I felt you keeping it down."
"Go on."
"You've earned it." There is a discipline I have been practicing, all these notebooks long, of holding my own reactions back until they can do no harm, and I will not pretend it has been easy, or that I have always managed it. For most of my marriage, I led with my feelings, offered them up at every turn as though my having a reaction were itself a contribution, as though Saloni needed my running commentary on her own life. The fortnight had asked the opposite of me, to feel everything and say none of it, to be a still clean room and not a voice. And the strange reward I was discovering is that of feeling withheld until the right moment lands with 10 times the weight of one spilled at the wrong one. I had saved mine for 2 weeks. It was about to be worth the saving. "I'm glad," I said. "I'm so glad I can hardly sit still. Not because you chose small. I genuinely didn't care which you chose. I'd have followed you into the empire and been glad of it if that had been your true thing. I'm glad because you found out who you actually are and you chose it, against an offer designed to make you forget who you are, and you did it awake. All the way, no fear driving it. That's the thing I'm glad about. Not the no, the clarity. My wife got handed a fortune to become someone else, and she listened to her own hands instead and stayed herself. That's the most beautiful thing I've watched you do, and I've watched you do a lot of beautiful things. I meant it as completely as I have ever meant anything. There is a particular kind of beauty that has nothing to do with how a person looks or even quite with what they do. The beauty of someone being unmistakably, unanswerably themselves in a moment that offered them every incentive to be someone else. The world had come to my wife with a fortune in its hands and a polite invitation to become a larger, glossier, more marketable version of herself, and she had listened past all of it to the small true voice in her own hands and stayed the exact size and shape she actually was. I have watched her make extraordinary things out of cloth. This was the most extraordinary thing I had ever seen her make, and she made it out of nothing but the refusal to lie to herself. And she did cry then properly for a moment across the kitchen table, not from sadness, or not only, but from the particular relief of being seen exactly right at the exact moment it mattered by the one person who had refused to make the seeing easier by telling her what to do. It is, I think, the rarest gift one person can give another, and the one most often mistaken for its opposite. To withhold your opinion from someone you love, at the very moment they're deciding the largest thing, looks from the outside like indifference, like a failure to care, like not being there for them. It is the reverse. It is the most active, most effortful caring there is, the caring that refuses to make itself the center, that loves the other person's freedom more than it loves the relief of having influenced them. I had wanted, every day for a fortnight, to help. The help I finally gave her was the kind that looked, to anyone who did not know its cost, like doing nothing at all. We sat with it a while, the decision made, the grief and the gladness both on the table in the morning light, and after a time she said the thing that turned the no from an ending into a beginning, which is the thing she always eventually does, because she is a maker, and makers cannot help but build forward out of any rubble. "It doesn't mean I stay exactly as I am," she said, thinking aloud now, the maker's mind starting to move again. "Refusing the empire isn't the same as refusing to grow. I think there's a smaller growing that's still true, a few more hands, mine teaching there's a slightly bigger small thing where I still cut, still touch every piece, just reach a few more people than 12. Not an empire. A workshop, maybe not a factory. Devika built a house. Maybe I build a slightly larger room, but still a room I can fill with my own hands, still small enough to stay warm. She turned the idea over, and I watched the grief recede a half step as the making rose to meet it. There might be a way to grow that doesn't cost me my hands. Not the Empire's way. My way. Smaller, slower, truer. I'll have to find it, but it's there. The choice was never really between the Empire and staying frozen. That was the false framing the whole time. The real choice was between growing in a way that keeps my hands and growing in a way that takes them, and I just chose the first one. And I thought, there it is. Not a no to growth. A no to the wrong growth. The true thing is almost never the small thing or the big thing. It is the right-shaped thing. The growth that matches the maker. And she had just, in the space of a fortnight and a quiet morning, found the shape of hers. I wrote it in the 5th notebook that night. The Empire refused. The envelope about to be answered. The grief and the gladness settling into their long shapes. What goes quiet? The answer came on day 13, like the color, not a thunderclap, a quiet. She got still enough to listen and the small room went quiet. The true thing always does, and the Empire kept talking. The true one doesn't have to sell itself. It goes quiet and waits for you to notice it was right. She's a maker of the hands. The cutting is where she lives, never a stage to graduate from. She tested it against the fear, Devika's warning. A frightened no is loud. It keeps justifying itself. This no is quiet, settled, defending nothing. I tried to scare myself out of it and couldn't. There's no fear holding it up, just the plain fact of who I am. The hardest discernment, true no versus frightened no, invisible from outside, done the only way it can be, by listening for which goes quiet. And she grieves it, the not pretending equals the honest thing. I refuse the Empire because I'm a handsmaker, but a handsmaker who also wanted it. The reach, the money, the thousands of weepers. Refusing the good thing isn't free just because you did it for the true thing. There's a woman in a city I'll never visit who won't get her dress now. Anyone who says the true choice doesn't hurt never made one. Clear and right and sad, all three. I'd be suspicious of myself if I were only the first two. My moment, finally earned. Thumb off the scale for 14 days, now that you've decided I'm allowed. I'm glad, not because you chose small, I'd have followed you into the Empire, but because you found out who you actually are and chose it awake, against an offer designed to make you forget who you are. The clarity, not the no. My wife got handed a fortune to become someone else and listened to her own hands and stayed herself. She cried. The relief of being seen exactly right at the moment it mattered by the one who refused to make it easier. The turn no beginning. Refusing the Empire isn't refusing to grow. The false framing was Empire versus Frozen. The real choice was growth that keeps my hands versus growth that takes them. A slightly bigger room, not a factory. A workshop. Mine teaching theirs, still cutting, still touching every piece. Smaller / slower / truer. My way. Not a no to growth. A no to the wrong growth. The true thing is the right-shaped thing. The growth that matches the maker. And below it, the working line. The true choice is not the small one or the big one. It is the right-shaped one. The one that matches who you actually are, and you find it not by thinking but by listening in the hands for which road goes quiet. The true road goes quiet. The false road, even when it is a genuinely good road, keeps talking, keeps selling itself, keeps needing you to be impressed. And choosing the true one is not free. You pay for it fully in the good thing you give up, and you must grieve that good thing honestly, because a true choice that costs you nothing was never really a choice. clear and right and sad. If it is only the first two, distrust it. The sadness is how you know the road was real. To be continued in episode 45, After the No.
Simbolo di copyright mia.
All rights reserved. That was episode 44 of My Playful Wife. If this story is staying with you, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus chapters are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
Mia.
Thank you for listening.